This week on Talking Politics USA.
Donald Trump and the MAGA faithful going head-to-head with Taylor Swift.
I do believe that autism does come from vaccines.
Donald Trump is something of a rare bird. RFK is something of an odd duck.
Was that the phone call, possibly, when he was on the phone to Donald Trump?
Is he going to rule this kind of all-powerful royal court?
That is music to the ears of Henry VIII or Donald Trump in this scenario.
We're back, baby. America is back.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Rageh Omaar, and if you've hit play and expected to hear Tom, Robert and Anushka talking politics, well, let me explain. You'll get your usual episode on Wednesday, but this is our new offering called Talking Politics USA, which will be bringing you into your feed every Monday, dissecting the key topics in Trump's America for a British audience. Now, Tom worked so hard helming the ITV coverage for the Trump inauguration that he's gone on a well-deserved holiday. So you got me in the chair for a few weeks, and I'm very happy to be here. And joining me, of course, is our Dan in Washington, Dan Rivers. Dan, hello.
Hello, lovely to see you.
And you. And also in Washington, back, I'm told, by popular demand, after one appearance only, is Republican strategist and friend of the show, Matthew Bartlett. Now, perhaps I should introduce myself. I'm the international affairs analyst here, and I was fortunate enough to be in DC for the recent inauguration too, and was kindly invited to a few of the parties being thrown in Trump's honour. We're recording this Monday afternoon in the UK, the day after America's biggest sporting event of the year, the Super Bowl, as the Kansas City Chiefs took on the Philadelphia Eagles in New Orleans. But it wasn't all hail to the Chiefs, though, as the Eagles ran out very comfortable winners. So down the three-peat is dust, with Mahomes being dominated by the sack-hungry D-line, including an ugly pick six. Where did it go so wrong for Andy Reid's star-studded offense?
No idea what you're talking about now.
Neither do I.
The Chiefs, they were trying to win their third consecutive Super Bowl, which apparently is known as a three-peat. I have no idea why, but I enjoyed watching the match last night.
Well, we talked last night when we were discussing what we were going to discuss, and you were about to settle in to watch it with your family.
Yeah, we did. We all sat around. We had a couple of beers, and so you could see in the neighbourhood, everyone was watching the game last night. The streets were deserted. And it is a kind of, it's a sort of cultural moment for the US, I think it's fair to say, Matthew, right? This is a moment when America comes together. I think it's the biggest TV audience of the year. You get all these ads with the celebs halfway through, often, which are quite funny. So it is a real kind of a touchstone moment for America.
Well, Matt, help us out. What about the three-peat and everything else?
Yeah, listen, it was a huge night. Super Bowl Sunday does not get bigger in the U.S. And last night was, two epic matchups here. We had Donald Trump and the MAGA faithful going head-to-head with Taylor Swift and the Swifties. They were both there, kind of on opposite sides. But ultimately, again, the game was not much of a game, and a lot of the theatrics around it were a little muted. I think a lot of people are talking more about maybe the halftime show than anything.
Okay, well, there's a lot to unpack because it was culture, it was sports, it was also a lot of politics. Because I suppose an easier question to both of you, and I'll go with you, Matt, first. How did Donald Trump make history at this Super Bowl? Because he did.
Well, I did. Yeah, twofold, right? Historically, or typically, the American president will sit down for an interview with the network that is hosting the Super Bowl. In this case, it was Fox. Now, previously, Joe Biden did not do that. And they said, well, we don't want to inject politics into sports. I think the real reason was, maybe President Biden was not up to the interview. Maybe his team wanted him muted. Obviously, this is the opposite with Donald Trump, who sat for a long interview with Brett Baer, made quite a bit of news, actually made some news on the way flying into the Super Bowl, where he was the first American president to attend a Super Bowl. He proclaimed the Gulf of America Day, and then again was at the game, present, happy to be cheered along by some of his supporters, and then happy to take a shot at Taylor Swift, on social media. So yes, this is a mix of sports, of culture, of entertainment, of commercials, and some politics.
Well, let's take a look at the flight in which he went to attend the Super Bowl, because as you said, he was the first American president to attend a Super Bowl, but he flew over a little stretch of water which got renamed whilst he was on the flight. So let's take a look at it.
Attention on board. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please direct your attention out the right side of the aircraft. Air Force One is currently in international waters, for the first time in history, flying over the recently renamed Gulf of America. Please enjoy the flight, and we are now about to head westbound to Super Bowl 59.
Wow, he did that well.
I mean, that is all Donald Trump, isn't it? I mean, that is just a cinematic moment, and that's what he's all about, isn't it, Dan?
Yeah, it was sort of peak Trump, wasn't it? I mean, this renaming of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, in some ways, it is a brilliant piece of political theatre, because it kind of doesn't matter in many ways. It doesn't change much. It kind of fits into the narrative that Donald Trump is trying to create of, America is back. And we are stamping literally our authority in our hemisphere with the renaming of the Gulf of Mexico. And there he was, sitting in his huge, slightly oversized leather chair on Air Force One as the pilot announced they were flying over the Gulf of America.
Matt, I mean, it is vintage Trump 2.0.
Yeah, this is not, a policy that will change many lives. It's even unclear if this is somehow, enshrined in American policy. But the psychological impacts. Remember, a feeling and sentiment can sometimes be more powerful than legislation. So yes, this is the psychological effect of Donald Trump saying, "We're back, baby. America is back. This is the Gulf of America." And I wouldn't underestimate that psychological aspect of it. We'll see, how that relates in terms of foreign policy. Most people will continue on with their life, maybe call it the Gulf of Mexico, maybe call it the Gulf of America. But this is something where the MAGA faithful love it. And those that can't stand Donald Trump, this is just nails on a chalkboard of something that they don't believe, an American president should ever behave or act like this.
I mean, it's pretty amazing that an interview with an American president in front of, before the biggest sporting event in, American lives makes, in some senses, more news than the Super Bowl itself. Now, let's take a look at the interview with Fox News with Brett Baer, as you were saying.
I think Canada would be much better off being a 51st state, because we lose $200 billion a year with Canada, and I'm not going to let that happen. It's too much. Why are we paying $200 billion a year, essentially in subsidy to Canada? Now, if they're a 51st state, I don't mind doing it. So I don't know if it's kickbacks or what's going on, but the people, look, I ran on this, and the people want me to find it. And I've had a great help with Elon Musk, who's been terrific.
Bottom line, you say you trust him.
Trust Elon? Oh, he's not gaining anything. In fact, I wonder how he can devote the time to it. He's so into it.
So, Matt, what do we make of that?
Well, there's a lot there to unpack. A lot of people thought Donald Trump was merely toying with this notion of Canada as a 51st state, teasing the Canadian Prime Minister, ringing the doorbell and letting him know that he's back. But now he keeps going on and talking about it as if this is something of a legitimate policy discussion. No one really knows. It seems that the president has some sort of idea. Donald Trump always has some legitimacy to what he says, yet sometimes talks about it in very illegitimate ways. So when it comes to Canada being the 51st state, I'm not sure that's going to happen anytime soon or ever. But then when he talks about Elon Musk, this is a notion of trying to break down bureaucracy here in America, entrench DC bureaucracy, a very difficult task. Elon Musk has been, working at a very rapid pace, and we are yet to see, the full effect of what he is doing.
Very quickly, Dan, do you think they're going to, this marriage between political marriage between Elon Musk and Donald Trump is going to last the course?
I think it probably will. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Elon Musk the other day put out a post on X saying, I love Donald Trump, as much as any, heterosexual man can love another man. So he kind of almost alluding to the fact that this is a kind of almost a sort of marriage. But seriously though, yeah, I mean, he has given Elon Musk enormous power and reach into government with the authority of the president to pretty much do what he wants. I mean, some of the kind of stories that have been emerging of Elon Musk and his cabal of young 20-something men who are part of this Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, going into government departments, effectively sort of firing or retiring people. We've seen this week the names of USAID being taken down off the building in downtown DC. So this sort of dismantling of what they see as a bloated state that is wasting taxpayers' money is happening, and it's happening at an incredibly rapid clip.
We're doing the talking, but we want you to ask the questions. So do email us, talkingpolitics@itv.com, to make sure we're focusing on what matters most to you. Now, we're really keen to take you inside the royal court of Donald Trump. We want to introduce you to some of the key players in Trump's circle to work out where the power really lies in this administration and why this time round it's more like a royal court, all serving the one true king. We'll focus on more next week, but let's start with the figure most familiar to UK audiences, RFK Jr., Trump's new Health and Human Services Secretary.
Are you lying to Congress today when you say you are pro-vaccine? Or did you lie on all those podcasts?
He asked me, are there vaccines that are safe and effective? And I said to him, some of the live virus vaccines are. And I said, there are no vaccines that are safe and effective. And I was going to continue for every person. Every medicine has people who are sensitive to them, including vaccines.
Right. So
he interrupted me at that point.
Now, I suppose the most extraordinary thing is that Robert Kennedy comes from not just American political royalty, he comes from American democratic royalty, being the son of Robert Kennedy, the brother of John F. Kennedy. Extraordinary to see him alongside Trump, wouldn't you say, Matt?
Certainly. Not to speak ill of the Kennedys in general, but they are a family with a very sordid past. I'm from New Hampshire, not Massachusetts. So the media has propped up the Kennedy name for so long, even when a lot of them have been pretty bad boys, certainly lately. And now you have the black sheep who turned MAGA, part of the blue MAGA movement. Someone who I would question if their last name was not Kennedy, if they would be sitting in that seat. A lot of wild ideas. I've said Donald Trump is something of a rare bird. RFK is something of an odd duck. With that said, he's raising some questions around food supply and around pharmaceuticals that many Americans, regardless of party, many parents, actually say he might be onto something there. Is there something about obesity? Is there something in our food supply? Why is every other commercial, a pharmaceutical commercial here in America? We will see if he is confirmed, if he can actually ask some of those questions, if he could be a transformative figure in American politics, or if he gets swallowed up by bureaucracy like most every other HHS secretary.
Dan, what's your take on RFK?
Yeah, he's one of the most controversial picks for the cabinet in a cabinet full of lots of controversial picks. Not least, I think, because I think people think he could do real damage in terms of the take-up of vaccines. He is an avowed anti-vaxxer. He's made his views clear about the link between the MMR vaccine and autism, a link which has been repeatedly shown to not exist, and yet he has pushed that link. there is concern that that will result in real damage to the health of Americans and by extension around the world. Don't forget, America sets the sort of health agenda in many ways. It sets the kind of policy for research and so on. And so I think a lot of people are really worried about him having such a powerful position in the cabinet. He is also an incredibly sort of colourful character. I fascinatingly met him during the Republican National Convention. And he was on the phone at a restaurant that we were at, pacing up and down. Now, I do wonder, in hindsight, was that the phone call, possibly, when he was on the phone to Donald Trump doing a deal? Because you'll remember at one point, RFK Jr. was running against Donald Trump, and then he dropped out and is now a member of his cabinet, or soon to be a member of his cabinet. We'll never know. But he's got all these kind of weird and wonderful side stories about running over bears and putting them in Central Park and, killing a whale and strapping it to the roof of his car and so on. You name it, he's done it. A really colourful character in many ways, but to his critics, one who is potentially quite dangerous as well.
It'd be amazing to know what was going on in that phone call when you spoke to him. We'll never know. Now let's turn to Tulsi Gabbard, Trump's director of national intelligence, who had this blockbuster showdown during her Senate grilling.
Is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America? That is not a hard question to answer when the stakes are this high.
Senator, as someone who has
your
served
answer,
in
yes
uniform,
or no, is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
As someone who has worn our uniform in combat, I understand how critical our national security is.
Apparently you don't.
She's also another incredibly controversial and surprising political shapeshifter. Tell us about her, Dan.
Yeah, so she was being grilled there by Senator Michael Bennet about Edward Snowden. And what he was getting to there is the allegation that she repeatedly has taken a pro-Russia position, a pro-Putin position when it comes to foreign policy. She, interestingly, a bit like RFK, started life as a Democrat. She is from Hawaii, represented Hawaii in the House and later in the Senate as a Democrat, then became an independent, and her political journey has taken her further and further to the right, and also someone that is, a bit of a conspiracy theorist as well, I think, when it comes to her suspicions around the kind of deep state in America. But yeah, she's accused of effectively being, taking Putin's talking points and regurgitating them in American media. And she is now the pick for the director of national intelligence. So an incredibly powerful position, sitting at the apex of all of the intelligence services here in the US. She really, I would say, is probably got one of the most powerful positions in the intelligence world if she is confirmed. And yet, to her critics, she is a Syria stooge and a Russia stooge, something she rejected forcefully in that committee hearing, which she got through. Just so listeners and viewers understand, these picks for cabinet, you can't just appoint someone. They have to go through a kind of committee hearing, like a job interview, really, where they'll pick them apart. And that's what you were listening to there. And then it goes to a full vote in the Senate. But all suggestions at the moment are that she will get through that vote in the Senate.
Matt, she will get through, but do you agree with Dan that she has these controversies of being a pro-Putin politician within the United States?
She is suspect because of her suspect of some of the intelligence, American intelligence over the years, whether it's Russia, whether it's Assad, there's a skepticism that she has. I think probably most Americans might share some of that, but maybe not as far as she's gone in some ways. But it is very interesting that typically you would have concerns around Edward Snowden, concerns around espionage, spying, privacy. These are issues that the right would always push forward, that the neocons, that the hawks would push forward. Now you have the left, which used to say Edward Snowden is a hero for exposing this, like the Pentagon Papers, showing. So now you're having the left say this. So she's part of that conundrum. Let's remember, this is not head of the CIA. This is not FBI. This is, a very critical role, as Dan said, a very critical role, apex. You are giving the president that daily briefing in part. She's not putting together all the information, but she's part of the one that, serves as a filter with the president. I think she'll get through. We'll see how she does.
Okay, and now finally, let's turn to probably the least known and yet most controversial of the three figures. We've talked about RFK and Tulsi Gabbard. Now we're profiling Russell Vought. This is the man dubbed Trump's Thomas Cromwell.
The forgotten men and women of this country, those who work hard every day in cities and towns across this country, deserve a government that empowers them to achieve their dreams. While Office of Management and Budget may not be a household term, the agency's work is profoundly one that impacts their lives. If confirmed, I will continue to serve with the best interests at their heart, to serve and strive to ensure every decision contributes to a more prosperous future for all Americans.
Now, Dan, this is a man endorsed by Elon Musk, and he's going to play a very critical role in power sharing. Tell us about him and why the label Thomas Cromwell to Donald Trump's royal court, rather like Henry VIII.
Yeah, so those that might not have watched Wolf Hall, Thomas Cromwell was the kind of scheming minister, I suppose, in the court at Henry VIII, and brilliantly played by Mark Rylance. So the analogy is that Russell Vought is this similar sort of, I suppose, Machiavelli, or I can try and reach for other historical examples, but he helped to author this Project 2025 paper by the Heritage Foundation, and has been a proponent of the absolute slash and burn when it comes to cutting what he thinks is the bloated bureaucracy of the US federal state. He did serve in a key position in Donald Trump's first term as head of the Office for Management and Budget, which is a sort of like the central nervous system of the executive, which has its kind of holds the reins of the purse strings, really, for payments and so on. And he's being nominated for that same position again this time round, with plans, that are already underway, really, through Elon Musk of completely cutting back many government departments, abolishing some government departments completely, such as the Department for Education. He's a kind of believer also in this kind of unitary executive theory, which is the idea that the president has unchecked power and can basically do what he wants. And obviously that is music to the ears of Henry VIII or Donald Trump in this analogy.
I mentioned earlier this idea of a royal court. I mean, one of the things about Donald Trump is, in my estimation, he's probably the most powerful, unbounded American president, certainly since Ronald Reagan. Is he going to rule this kind of all-powerful royal court in a whimsical way, or is there a strategy?
Unclear, right? Let's first remember, this is a result of democracy. The presidency, the Senate, the House, even the courts. The people have spoken. Long frustration. Donald Trump, again, a very interesting character in American politics. Sometimes he will zig when you think he's going to zag. He has no problem pushing out advisors. He has no problem even contradicting himself at times, backtracking on policy. We will see what happens. The notion of a royal court, leads me to question, well, what was the previous 4 years? Was that the emperor with no clothes, and who was leading the king then? Maybe some questions to be asked there.
Very quickly, Dan, do you think he is just much more powerful this time compared to his first administration?
I'm not sure about that. I mean, he's not the first president to have the trifecta, they call it, a Conservative majority plus the House, plus the Senate. Many other presidents have had that in the past. I think he's got a very supine party, the Republican Party, which has seeming at the moment unwilling to push back against him, and I think that does give him power. But I think we have to remember he hasn't won this overwhelming landslide that sometimes people say he has.
Interesting. All right.
You know,
Go on, Matt. I could see you sort of shaking your head to your side.
I would just say, Dan is absolutely correct, but we have not seen that type of landslides anymore. Our country's very divided. Bill Clinton came to power in 1992 with a third party, with 43% of the American vote. There were no questions whether or not he has a mandate. Yes, we're a divided nation, but a small wave is a political tsunami. And to have all three, especially where he came, especially adding minority groups, the guy's got some juice right now. Let's just be honest. How he uses it, that's what we'll see.
Thank you both, Matt and Dan in Washington. And that's all we have time for this week. If you like what you've heard, do hit the subscribe button and give us a nice review. If you think we can do better, please email us, talkingpolitics@itv.com. You can send us the questions you'd like Dan and our special guests to answer to make sure we're talking about the things that most matter to you. But until next time, if you're listening to this in the UK, America, or anywhere else around the world, have a great week.